there are always two opinions when it comes to movies. You've got the critic consensus, which tends to be they tend to like very artsy-fartsy, hoity-toity type, like Wes Anderson, Terry Gilliam type movies. And then you've got, the public consensus, the more general movie-going audience, Joe Popcorn. Things that broad to a bit more of a wider spectrum. Not to say that one's smarter than the other, just two very different things. So opinions on a movie tend to be very polarizing, falling into one of those two categories. And that's very apparent with Iron Man 3. Segue into that, you see that? But then, I read message boards and I try and ask and I look more into what kind of that general audience thinks of it, and it tends to be kind of the opposite. A lot of people are disappointed. A lot of people don't like it. So where does that put me? Being that, I consider myself a critic, but at the same time I'm not really into a whole lot of the artsy-fartsy type, critic bait type movies. So where does Iron Man 3 fall for me? Well, there's so much more to this one than the other Iron Man movies, than to any of the other independent Marvel movies, really. That this one kind of stands on its own. It's kind of hard to put it in the same vein as the other Marvel movies. It's the best of the Iron Man movies. Close second is the first one. But like I said, I try to get an idea of what people are saying about this one, what people think. And a lot of the reasons for not liking it don't make sense to me. Okay, like for instance, one of the complaints I hear is that it's too funny. Iron Man 3 is too funny. There's too many jokes. Okay. Well, first of all, considering what the state of comedy lately in movies, A Haunted House, Scary Movie 5, Identity Thief just came out not too long ago, and another Hangover movie's coming out, like, at least it's good comedy. Like, if it had been, like, Transformers it had too much comedy, but it was all bad comedy, too. Not that Iron Man should be a comedy-type movie, but at least it's good comedy. I would say that it's more about the timing. Comedy is all about, you can make the stupidest and simplest things funny if you time them just right. And a lot of the jokes and humor in Iron Man 3, it's either timed really well or it's a horrible mood killer. Moments of exposition or when a character is explaining something important that you need to know have random jokes inserted here and there, and it's a little distracting, if not, like I said, a mood killer. If any of you have ever seen Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, you know that Shane Black, who wrote and directed that, and then he wrote and directed Iron Man 3. He writes very smarmy, smart-ass characters.
Look up idiot in the dictionary. You know what you'll find?
Picture me?
No! The definition of the word idiot!
Which is great for Tony Stark, because that's who he is, a guy that uses humor as a defense mechanism. So when he responds with a one-liner, it's genuinely something that he would say, because humor is a defense mechanism. It's not really okay then for all the other characters to do it. It's not. It means that all the other characters in the movie act like that too. Whether it's the little kid, Guy Pearce's character, Rhodey, Happy, they all. You know what it is? It's like they're trying to do a Robert Downey Jr. impression in a movie starring Robert Downey Jr. So it's very off-putting, and like I said, if they had just maybe timed some of them a little bit better, then maybe it wouldn't have felt so overblown. What's another one? Oh, this one's my favorite. Iron Man wasn't in it enough. Iron Man is Tony Stark. Tony Stark is Iron Man. I just don't get it. I don't get that one at all. There's no alter ego. He's the same man in or out of the suit. The only difference is that when he's in the suit, he kicks ass. So, what I get from people saying Iron Man's not in it enough is we didn't get enough action. We didn't get enough explosions. We didn't get enough ass kicking. Not enough fighting, not enough explosions. God forbid that a talented team of people take the comic book source material off the pages and focus on the writing and the characters. Just wow. How unbelievable is that? It is, after all, based on a book. Why focus on the writing? It's like we're desensitized to pretty big explosions in comic books, and we can't sit still for interesting character arcs or stories. And by the way, Iron Man wasn't in it enough. The suit wasn't in it enough. Guess what's in the trailer, guys? What did you expect exactly? Okay, Tony doesn't spend much time in the suit, yeah, because the movie is about the man underneath. It's about, literally and metaphorically, it's about him feeling exposed, and vulnerable characters are 100 times more interesting. I don't know, I just don't fucking get it. For lack of better terms, I just don't fucking get that, like, at all. I don't get the whole, Iron Man wasn't in it enough. You know what, the entire last 10 minutes has more Iron Man by action explosion standards than the other two movies had, like, combined. So, fuck off with that. It was, and speaking of the other movies, like, okay, so how does this compare to the other movies? It was better than the second one, not that that's hard to do. Granted, the second one, I still really like. I still like the second one. It was a good movie, but I can remember so many things about the first one. I can remember the guilt that Tony felt when he saw firsthand what his weapons were doing. I remember him testing the suit. I remember the look on Pepper's face when she first, sees Tony in the suit and she puts it together. I remember Tony going to the Middle East and just getting shit done. What I remember from the second movie, well, I remember a bird. I remember the Japanese garden. I remember the Rock'em Sock'em robot scene. And Sam Rockwell dancing. Iron Man 2 was just Iron Man 1, but louder. This felt like a real sequel, not just to Iron Man 2, but kind of to the Avengers as well. It doesn't, the plot doesn't hinge on the events of the Avengers. Like, you don't need to have seen the Avengers to get this. Whenever they reference the Avengers, they just refer to it as that thing from New York, or just New York in general. No specific plot points from the Avengers loops its way into here, which was nice. What else do people complain about? They complained about the villains. I like the villains in this one. At least they had their own identity. Because let's face it, who were the villains in the other two movies? Now I have a power suit too. The villains in this have clear motives, and they have a very clever plan to see those motives through. And I'm not going to spoil the big twist, and neither should you. But I think it's awesome. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. First of all, it's kind of cool that I can actually say that a comic book action movie has legitimate, spoiler material to it. The fact that they, actually took that effort in the writing is really cool. But I like what they did with the villains in this. Does it deviate from the comics? Sure, yeah, but if it makes the movie more interesting to watch, who cares? So fucking what? If the movie didn't have that twist, and it did exactly what you wanted to, wouldn't that be kind of boring? I mean, in this particular context, yeah, sure, if it does what you wanted, then it becomes Spider-Man 3. And suddenly there is so much stuff to resolve, there is so much going on that the movie becomes cluttered, and then you're not happy anyway. So it's like there's no fucking pleasing anyone. Okay, when it turned out that Miranda Tate was actually Talia in Dark Knight Rises, those of you that read the comics were not surprised in the least bit because you already read that in the comics. So, by comparison, like, are twists only allowed when you know them ahead of time? What the fuck? That's not a twist. That's just doing what fans want. And I'm sorry, well, I can't say that without spoiling what the twist is. I'm just saying what you wanted to have happen with the twist, what you wanted to have happen would not work in this movie. For one, again, because it would become cluttered and the movie would buckle under its own weight. And two, it wouldn't have been believable in its own realm. As fans of comics and of movies, and both comics and movies, we should not be asking for the same thing, for something we already expect. We should be asking to be challenged. Okay, so I've kicked all your asses as far as the reasons why this movie sucks. What complaints do I have against it? Well, I went into it being like, this movie's 2 hours and 10 minutes long. That seems a little egregious. Turns out I was right. You could have cut about 30 minutes out of this movie and not missed a thing. There's a whole scene where Tony's in a like a news van and he's asking for help from this guy who's a big fan of his stuff. That whole scene drags its fucking feet for like 2 minutes. Honestly, it's probably closer to 3 minutes, but it feels like 5 or closer to 6 minutes. And I know it doesn't sound like much now, but when you're uncomfortable, a minute can be a long time. There's a whole action sequence in Tennessee, I think it is, that could have been cut out entirely. It does absolutely nothing for the plot. What else did I not like? I'm kind of bummed we didn't get to see the Iron Patriot do anything. I know what I just said about, Iron Man's not in it enough, but, the movie itself talks up Iron Patriot a lot, and then all we really see him do is, take on a few, like, normal guards, but minor, very minor, just not even a nitpick, just a little note. Legitimately, what I did kind of an issue with is, Tony goes through anxiety attacks throughout the movie, and that never really, and it's supposed to, coincide with the exposed man underneath the suit and that kind of thing. And it was really good. They built it up really well, but then they kind of dropped it, and I didn't feel like it totally resolved itself. I like that this wasn't just. I like that this wasn't filler for the next Avengers movie, which is what I'm kind of afraid all the other Marvel movies are going to be. I mean, Captain America Winter Soldier? What the fuck does that even mean? And Thor Dark World looks okay, kind of. Again, dark and gritty and Thor don't go together, but if it's grand enough in its scale, I guess it could be interesting. But now I'm just afraid that every Marvel movie is just gonna be one really long trailer for the Avengers movie. What else did I like? I like everything else. The action is really well done for once. The action actually has weight to it. It doesn't feel like a toy commercial. I like the relationship exploration between Pepper and Tony. I like I like the arc with Tony himself. I like him working through his issues. I like how he has no idea how to interact with a child. What else? Everything else. I like the. I know I just said the action was really well done, but they do a thing where the suit comes apart in pieces, and they do some really creative stuff with that, like on like Jackie Chan level creativity. There's no kung fu, and it's not nearly that elegant or eloquent, whatever the word. But you get what I mean. It's very creative action stuff instead of just blast, blast, gunfire, blast, blast. They do some really creative stuff with that. I could have sworn I noticed a plot hole. Oh, it wasn't a plot hole. At one point, a couple times, Tony's face gets bloody, but a couple times, if you'll notice it if you haven't seen the movie yet, look for it. When his face starts to get bloody, notice a couple times the blood switches sides. Sometimes it's weird. I like the buddy cop kind of feeling that Rhodey and Tony have now. I really like the end credits. Speaking of buddy cop, it looks like a 1970s, almost like a Bond type ending, sort of. Which is funny because at the end credits it says Tony Stark will return, like a spy movie, like a Bond movie. What else? Seriously, everything else in Iron Man 3 was fantastic. The way everything was captured, performances, Robert Downey Jr. again, completely owns the role. But I mean, it's not just operating on star power like the first movie was. It's legitimately like him evolving the character. It completely acknowledges the effect that the Avengers movie has had on the world without relying on the events of the Avengers to form a plot or a cohesive story. Guy Pearce was an interesting choice. I mean, he does just fine. He's genuinely kind of creepy and intimidating. But there's a couple moments where you're supposed to believe that Pepper is kind of like attracted to him, but it's like, it's Guy Pearce. Like, he just has a weird shape, and his hair slicked back, and it's gross, and I just don't buy it. Yeah, seriously, if you haven't already, fucking go out and see Iron Man 3. If you haven't seen the others, well, shame on you, but so what? If you haven't seen the Avengers, so what? This is one of the few, like, it's almost like it took me and my friend Kyle noticed that, and Chris, we noticed that the end credits gave a special thanks to Joss Whedon, and we were kind of wondering, like, I wonder what that is. Bearing that in mind, it's almost as if this movie took a note, like it learned a lesson from the Avengers, in that getting us to genuinely care, taking the time to draft up the character and get us involved in them personally gives the movie so much more of an impact. Oh, I remember the other thing I didn't like. There's a brunette girl played by Rebecca Hall from The Town and The Prestige. She does great, but the character is like, she's basically a plot device. She's a plot device for the villain to have powers, or for the villain to have powers. She didn't give her much to work with, but she was good. Yeah, Iron Man 3, just go see it, please, go out and see it. It's definitely one of the better comic book movies. It's a comic book movie that actually focuses on the character, the writing, which is what the comics are supposed to be about, not about big action and explosions, though those are nice. Yeah, I don't get a single one of the complaints against this movie. I object to pretty much every single one of them. I already know what Film Suit's going to say about this one, and I can already say I object. But I agree that it's still, it's damn good. It's better than the second one, better than the first one in my opinion. But that's a very thin line. Yeah, I can't say it enough. Go out and see Iron Man 3. And